I read every installment. They're just extraordinary. And we'll continue our conversation. Glad you're along tonight. Don't forget to visit our site at Rense.com. There for you around the clock, and we'll be right back. Okay, right back with Clif and George of HalfPastHuman.com and talking about Terra. They're expecting more snow in Denver. So interesting times.
We're getting snow here as well, along with the tropical storm force winds.
Yeah. All right. The issue with the projections and the work and the forecasting of Clif and George at HalfPastHuman.com really relates to anticipatory or building language and then release language. And the building language, release language spread for the 9/11 attacks was we'll tell you what it was, and I'm going to tell you what the building and release language for whatever is going on now is, and it's quite a different
scenario entirely.
Totally. Tell us more about that.
The data we had for the 9/11 showed basically 7 days of effective release language where everybody was venting, and then sort of a little flattening, if you will, a plateau of that level, which held for a total of 11 days. And now we're at levels where our current projections show that what we're about to enter tomorrow morning is going to be release language that will be sustained for months at the intensity or beyond the intensity gathering as we go forward of what was encountered in the first 5 days after 9/11 within the populous USA. Now, let me also be quite clear. The populous USA in this instance is a fully involved subset of the global populace. In the case of 9/11, that wasn't true. We took everybody's attention was focused on us, and the rest of the populace of the planet indeed participated, but not in a direct fashion, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
This time, it's a shared experience all the way around, and it begins a period of 5 months of real intense levels here in the U.S., but it's going to affect the population on the planet as a whole. And in fact, we even see the release language sort of like rolling around the planet. So it starts at, we just picked an arbitrary number because it sort of rhymed there, 10, 7, 7, 10.
Mm-hmm.
And, it might be 6 in the morning, might be 2 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But in any event, early this morning it'll start rolling around the planet. The release language is interesting because it's actually that. It's a language that accompanies the release of emotional tension from your body. And that's the chief archetype that we work with is body parts and body processes. So when we hit release language, you should know about it. And what we mean by that is that the release language will dominate, but it's also going to grow over time and continue pretty much unabated until March of next year.
That doesn't mean, release doesn't mean calming, relaxing, homogenizing and pasteurizing and all the rest of it.
No, here's a real good example for you. The building tension language is when you're in the theater and everybody's screaming and you don't know why, but you start screaming and running along with everybody else and you're involved in that general sense of panic. That's a slight form of release, but the real release comes out when you know that it was a fire that you escaped and you just start babbling about that, or in the midst of it. So building tension language is usually based around anticipatory fears, and release language is fears realized or fears experienced. And that can go on for some time. So bear in mind that during the Blitz in London, a lot of release language there as the actual bombs were falling every night, and then the next day would be all the building tension language as everybody anticipated the falling bombs.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, and this again goes on until early February after the inauguration, I guess.
I actually see it shading into March now.
All pushing into March.
Dynamic. Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, this is a big deal. Remember, September 11th release language lasted for about little less than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And this is going to go on for months and months. So we're talking about a massive financial reorganization. A collapse and reorganization. Of course, the cynics and wags out there may not be too far off when they suggest that the super rich are simply reorganizing the game and pulling the money closer to home.
Yeah, but then there's some huge undercurrents there that the wags, as you say, are probably not aware of, and they may not be following the trends among the lower classes.
Right, exactly. All right, George, as an economist, you've watched things for many, many years. All of this comes as really no great surprise to you or Clif or most of our listeners, quite frankly. Is it playing out in any particular areas that that are a surprise to you? You knew about the derivatives.
Really.
Yeah, you knew about all this,
Yeah, the only thing that really comes as a surprise is how the breakdown is proceeding along a more of a sectoral line than I expected.
Meaning?
Well, in a traditional inflation in like the 1930s, the breakdown, the collapse of pricing, the unavailability of credit was pretty even across the board. It took a while to sink in, a couple of 3-4 years until we hit the 1933 lows. Then we bounced off of that, and we hit the secondary low in 1937.
It was more democratic, shall we say?
Yeah. The linkage with all of our communication systems today that we've got are making it appear different than it is. So we've got a lot of economic pressure points that are coming to pass. And I guess I hear music, so that means I should be quiet.
No, it's all right. Very good, and very good point. Back in a minute, we'll ask our esteemed guests to talk about the Great Depression and what we may be facing here, any parallels they see. Of course, I actually see very few in specific terms, but in great generalities, yeah. This is a bicontinental. It's more than that. It's a worldwide. And the Russian stock market today was down call it 20%. That's an enormous plunge. So we have this kind of thing occurring around the world, not to that degree, but certainly marked and dynamic. I'll be right back. Okay, and we're back with Clif and George of HalfPastHuman.com. October 7th is the date they have settled upon. Now, they'll be the first to tell you that they certainly are not always right. And we may be looking at October 7th, as Americans tend to do, as some kind of doomsday event. Something horrible is going to happen. A nuclear bomb is going to go off in Washington, D.C. or Philadelphia or Chicago. No, that's not it. We're already, in case you didn't notice, and I know all of you did, we're already seeing a catastrophe. And it's simply compounding. And maybe October the 7th will be the day when people see the what they think is the totality of it and will be able to anticipate, at least in their own minds, where it's going to go. They may be certainly wrong, but at any rate, this does appear to be a turning day. What happens in Europe tomorrow will be, I think, extraordinary. And what's happening here now is absurd. One story, George, I want to get... excuse me, I shouldn't be editorializing.
No, that's not editorializing.
What I'd like to say, and this caught me, and I published the story. I didn't get one comment from anyone else. The Fed is apparently now in discussions with states and major corporations in terms of loaning them money. Now, if the Fed, a private consortium of bankers, loans California, and Arnold wants $7 billion, there's that 7 again, they're going to have a hell of a lot of control over California. And if they do this among enough states, in essence, they will literally own a large piece of the United States, formerly United States of America, not to mention corporations. So the Fed could end up being the landlord of many states in this country.
It's a natural progression of events, though. I mean,
they own us anyway, so
yeah,
really
that's true.
Who cares?
But I mean, they might as well make it official, right?
Well, we've got layoffs going on all over the place. We've got auto sales collapsing. 62% of Americans who have credit cards will find that their balances, their credit limits will be shrunk in many cases to zero because their credit scores are under 750. All this talk about European banks issuing government guarantees is just how the spin is working out because governments are issuing the guarantees to prevent what? Bank runs.
Sure.
And so rather than say RUNS, which scares the bejesus out of people, we're guaranteeing everything. Right. We're in the process of nationalizing huge sectors of the economy.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say
deflating the currency.
Yeah, exactly.
When you miss a credit card payment, many of you out there, if you miss one, your nice 4 or 5% rate jumps to over 20% permanently.
You don't even have to miss them. They actually have engineered into their processing algorithms within the computers a rollover that selects and throws these certain number of sides that you get.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I know guys who work in the industry.
And you need to know, Jeff, that it's not 20%. There are outfits that are rolling people into 35.9% APR.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's scandalous. And your previous guest was talking about derivatives.